Welcome to the Mindful Mama Movement podcast. I'm Shannon Kinney-Dew, creator of afreespiritlife.com.
And I'm Ashley Walburn, owner of Home Holistic. And together, we are bringing you the Mindful Mama Movement.
Mindful mothering is about nurturing your heart and soul while you nurture your children. It's about consciously awakening to your inner wisdom and being peacefully present as a mama, no matter where you are on your journey. From discovering your newborn to loving and accepting the wonderful people who've left your nest. Our movement is empowering mamas to be authentic and to live inspired lives. We're so happy you're here.
To be free, to feel free, to be.
Hey everyone, it's Shannon. Welcome to episode 28 of the Mindful Mama Movement podcast. Ashley and I are so excited that we are nearing the end of our first season. We have exceeded our expectations. It has been such a pleasure bringing this show to you. We're having so much fun. We've learned a ton and we've connected to so many amazing women like you. And we just thank you. Thank you for listening to the show and for all of your support and for joining our Mindful Mama Movement group on Facebook, for subscribing to our show, for leaving your reviews and ratings on iTunes. You are helping us reach more moms all over the world. So thank you for that. To listen to all of our past episodes, visit mindfulmamamovement.com. And to learn more about Ashley, if you happen to live in the Kansas City area, Ashley's studio offers amazing yoga classes for pre- and postnatal and for women of all stages of life. They also have a holistic center where you can get acupuncture, chiropractic care, counseling, and more. To learn all of those details and to visit the studio, go to homeholistic.com. And to learn more about my services, I am a holistic life coach and I offer one-on-one coaching and soul care mentoring. I also have an online monthly support group called the Live Freely Circle. To learn about those details, you can visit afreespiritlife.com. Okay, on to the show. We are sharing our wonderful conversation with Julia Aziz today. Julia is the mother of 3 children and the author of Lessons of Labor, One Woman's Self-Discovery Through Birth and Motherhood. As a counselor and interfaith minister, Julia has worked with women through many life stages, from having a first child to losing a loved one. In addition to teaching at a graduate school for integrative medicine, she leads private meditation groups, movement workshops, and silent retreats exploring creativity, self, and purpose. To learn more about Julia, you can find her at her website, Julia Aziz, that's AZIZ.com. We love this conversation today because Julia is so authentic and she's so open about the realities of birth and motherhood and how she's learning that multitasking may not be the best thing, that when she can unlearn multitasking, she can be more present with her children. She talks about how hard it is to find that calm, that peace, that presence when we're triggered, whether it's they don't like mealtime or they're having a tantrum about whatever. It's hard. Mothering is hard, and Julia's really honest about her experience with it and also her way of navigating back to center, back to peace, back to mindfulness. It's a wonderful conversation, and we know you're going to feel really inspired. Enjoy the show.
Hi, Julia. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Can you share a little bit more about yourself, the work you do, and what stage of motherhood you are in?
Sure. So I live in Austin. I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl that are currently 11, 8.5, and almost 6. I teach at a school for integrative medicine, Chinese medicine, and I teach psychology and clinical communications there. And I'm also do some counseling. My background is I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I used to do therapy with people until I had children and needed to back off from that level of emotionally intense work. And then I also have independent work that I do where I do workshops using meditation, writing, movement, retreats, that sort of thing.
What was it like for you becoming a mother for the first time?
It's a huge life transition, I would say. I mean, probably the biggest of all life transitions that I've experienced thus far. I knew that it was, everyone tells you that it's going to be a big deal and you're going to fall in love with this baby, but I didn't realize how much it was going to change me as a person and sort of there's a quote, I don't know who has it about, that when you become a mother, it's like part of your heart is living outside of yourself. And going through that transition to feeling like, I could have that much sort of love and protection for this vulnerable human being. And it's not just about me anymore was huge. And I think it takes a while, it took me a while to sort of come into a level of relaxedness around that and comfort and for that to become a new norm.
When you say a while, how long, just in your own story, with at least your first child, would you say?
I remember when he was about 10 weeks old, looking at him and feeling this like overpowering love for him and realizing that in those first 10 weeks, I had been so sort of like a primal level fear for his survival that I hadn't really gotten to feel that love. I mean, I loved him, but it was crowded out by how much protectiveness I felt towards him. And so I think around then things started opening up a little more. But I would say, to adjust to like that I'm a mom now and I feel like I know, like that became part of my identity. I think that did take, months to a year. I mean, it depends, it's like there were so many other changes going on as well. But certainly I think by the time my second son was born, I felt like I had been a mom, it was a big part of who I was at that point.
I love that primal level of fear. I think we've all had that kind of like, where it just takes over you at some point. Yeah. Well, you wrote a lovely book that you shared with us, Lessons of Labor, One Woman's Self-Discovery Through Birth and Motherhood. And that title alone, it's like speaks at what both Ashley and I do in our own work. That's why we're just so happy to have you here. Ashley's always, involved with helping women transition into motherhood. And one of my biggest passions is helping women in their own self-discovery journey. So I love that you're combining the two in your own story. Tell us what prompted and inspired you to share your story in a book form, and then just share for the readers, how, or the listeners, how the book really is formatted, because I think that's really unique.
Yeah, and that's actually what prompted it, really, is the format, because the sort of concept for the book was what inspired me to write it. Before I became a mother in my mid-20s, I sort of sold everything and went to Asia to study Buddhist meditation. And I remember being in a 10-day silent retreat there. And at the time, so much went on in those 10 days. Like I sort of faced every fear, every challenge I'd had sort of came up by just sitting there. And I had this idea about writing something about that, about like each day sort of being a metaphor for something else in my life. And then I never did that. But when I went through childbirth, I realized it was just the same thing. It was like the process of being in labor brought up so many emotions, and it was such a sort of spiritual challenge that I knew it was going to be physically difficult, but I didn't realize the emotional, mental, spiritual level of it. And that so much of what I had experienced in that labor was just a microcosm of what I experienced all the time. in the rest of my whole life's journey, like the lessons, the emotional and spiritual lessons of that were the same. And so the idea was that to kind of use that as a microcosm. And it ended up being about motherhood as well, because that was my life once I had the kids. It was so consuming, but it's really about life in general. It's really about surrendering, like learning to let go of control, which is learning to trust, which has been a theme for me in my life. And so the book is organized in, I have 3 kids, and I also had a miscarriage before the first one. And so there's 4 sections. And at the beginning of each chapter, I'm telling a part of that birth story, and then sort of saying, like, here's this life lesson from that and how that relates to the rest of my life. So, and like I said, the underlying theme has to do with letting go of control. And so it's like facing pain, facing uncertainty that happens when you're in childbirth is the same as, the living life and all the things that come at you. So, I was just inspired. I don't think that my story is in any way unusual, unique, no like crazy gory details to my childbirth. But I think that mainly I wanted to help women look at their own lives as something to learn from, like that no matter what happens to us, whether we enjoy it or not, there's ways that we can grow. And so kind of taking that perspective to motherhood and to childbirth was my intention for the book.
That's wonderful. I agree with you. I think that those words, surrender and letting go and learning to trust, like, I think we get sometimes minute by minute practice as a mother in those, don't you think?
Yeah.
And so I love one of the topics you talk about, specifically is about letting go in your book. But I really liked how you talk about how you sometimes, or even before you became a mom, you had the satisfaction of completion of things. You'd start something and you'd have that feeling of just like, you're finished.
Yeah.
And now you, as a mother, you get to experience the freedom of letting go. I think that statement alone is such a positive way to say that, because I think, and I'm still, learning as a mom of 3 boys who has, creative projects and things that I want to do. And, that idea of completion, I may have 10 minutes in a day to do something, and I've gotten really good at how to use those 10 minutes. But I have to continually surrender and practice letting go. And I find that so often when we try to control and try to hold on too tight and try to check off that list because we want it complete, we want to feel that satisfaction, that's when the struggle really is, happening. And so share with us a little bit more, some examples in your own life. Let's talk about maybe those, since your book is, focusing on the birth. Let us know where did you have to really practice letting go in those early days? And then now fast forward to even today or yesterday, where are you still learning and practicing letting go?
Yeah. I think the early days were super challenging because, especially with the first one, because I wasn't used to that. I was used to, I was kind of somebody who would get the work done and then relax, and it's like, I like to like plow through stuff and then like kind of let go of responsibility and enjoy myself. And that is not a recipe for success as a mother, because the responsibility is 24/7 and there's always something that needs attention. And so I think, when they were young, I had to really learn to make my task list much smaller, like to expect to accomplish much less and to be purposeful about creating the space for it if I needed to. Like, for instance, my daughter was, I think my youngest was 8 months old when I started writing this book in earnest. And it was all just little pieces here and there. Like, she would be taking a nap. My oldest was in kindergarten, and the other one I would set up with a cartoon or something, and I'd have 20 minutes, and that would be the time I had to do some writing. but she might wake up, babies, like who knows how long she's going to sleep, if he's going to get hungry. And so if I was determined, like, no, I expected this much time and I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it happen, like that would create a bunch of stress, whereas if I said, like, I have to use whatever I have, and then, it's like the baby's cry is like the alarm bell. It's like, oh, this is over now. Here we go. And to be able to let go of it in that moment and say, it's time to close this. I'll reopen this again, in those 5 minutes between dinner and when everyone comes to the table or whatever, So I think when they were little, it was very tiny bits of time to start something, or like, I think I wrote in the book about moving, like I couldn't just, when we moved from one house to another, spend a day packing stuff up. It would be like 5 minutes. Okay, let me get all the pots in this box, and then, and having a sense of, can I feel some success in just having completed that? And the freedom, I think, in it is saying, like, you know what, nothing is that important, like things can be left undone to some extent. And now it's more subtle in some ways. Like now that they're older, I can feel like wanting to kind of manage things again. And I have to remind myself, no, it's the same, because now they might be quiet for a while. Maybe they're reading or they're playing together nicely for a little while, and I'm like, oh, I could get some work done right now. Yeah. And I start to do that. And then I'm so frustrated when it does not, 2 minutes later, everyone's in my room asking for something or they start fighting and, whatever happens. And so, now I feel, for me, it's more like not starting things like that. Something that takes my mental focus to like really give myself space to do that. And it's easier now because I'm not nursing every 2 hours. I can arrange that with my husband, or I can, just like carve out time. Like this is for my mental focus. And other times, like if I happen to get something done, great. But other than that, like I really just it creates more stress in my family life if I'm trying to do too many things at once. So I feel like I'm unlearning the multitasking. It's really hard to focus on one thing at this point. So I'm needing to get back to that.
Well, it's a really evolved, experience to be able to just, kind of say to yourself, what do I need to be doing right now? And sometimes I need to be focused on parenting, and that needs to have, the most of my attention. And when they're peaceful, to say like, oh, you can get to this, work that you're doing, and I can go do that right now, even if it's for 7 minutes.
Right. Or maybe I could be peaceful for 7 minutes.
Yeah. Like maybe I don't have to do anything. I have a lot of moms, I'm a birth doula, but I also teach yoga. And so we have a mommy baby yoga class. And so often those moms with the new babies that are kind of 1 week to, 8 months old, when the moms are transitioning back into work, whether they're working at home or they're going to work, that, of course they're like overwhelmed about like, oh God, like, well, I'm a mom now. And so like, that's all I'm doing. And how can I be a mom and a worker? Because they're like these two separate beings. I was I worked at Hallmark or, whatever it was that I was doing. And I think so much of the anxiety really comes from, how can I do all of these things effectively? And I mean, what you're saying is so useful. Like I don't have to do them all at the same time. I can, I could be separate.
Well, something you said, I like how you worded it. You said unlearning the multitasking, and I'd like you to talk about that, because I love that. Like that speaks my language now, because I'm constantly trying to see where can I simplify my life. But I can also see a lot of listeners hearing that and think, what? Like, how do you make the lunches?
How am I going to get it done?
Get to work without some sense of multitasking, And so share with us just like, where do we find the balance in that? Talk specifically to those who are like, I thought I was supposed to multitask.
Right. Well, and I don't don't get me wrong. I mean, I have a million things going on. You know, I've got 3 kids and a part-time job and this independent work and then, you know, like this and that. So it looks like a whole bunch of crazy, you know, but when I say that, what I mean is like, if whatever I'm doing, like right now, I'm talking to you two and it's like, I want to be fully doing that and my mind, not somewhere else. So for instance, I left work and I came home to have this call and I picked up the mail and I saw this thing that I know when I open it is going to create stress. Like it's this weird car accident thing happened and it's like, and I was like, oh, I have 10 minutes. And I told myself, no, not going to open that because I don't want to go into this interview with that sort of underlying stress. And I'm going to have another 10 minutes before I pick up the kids after this. And I can look at it then.
Yeah.
It's just like, I feel like it's just being more conscious about how affected I am by, you know, changing my focus so often. And so, you know, there's a time of day that I make lunches. And for me, it helps to have routine, you know, like to know when I'm going to do things, to not feel so scattered. And so it's like, okay, this is the time. But sometimes I'm making lunches while I'm also making dinner and I'm on the phone and like maybe listening to a podcast somehow in between there. I keep having this word resource, like resourcing, like I need to be coming back to the source of energy, of love, of my, you know, of my spirit all the time, like very frequently throughout the day. It can't just be like, wait till I'm completely fried and burned out and then I can go, you know, have a little retreat day or something. You know, it's like all the time I need to be checking in, letting go of the last thing I did so that I can be present for the next thing. And taking, you know, I'm trying to practice, you know, like if I'm waiting to pick up the kids from school and I have an extra 5 minutes, instead of getting on the phone and doing this and that, it's like, what about just breathing and like looking around for 5 minutes or just chatting with somebody, you know, like enjoying those little natural pauses that happen instead of trying to fill them with more things to do, because there's always more things to do.
Yeah, that's not going to go away.
No.
I do think like what you're saying, that when we do it, and Shannon and I were talking about this earlier today, that when you do it and you recognize what that feels like, you're just going to be naturally drawn to doing that more and saying like, oh, I've got 5 minutes till the kids get to the car. I'm going to just let the sun come in and I'm going to listen to the noises outside, even if it's traffic. And just, like really allow that decompression. That it's motivating.
Well, and it's so necessary, those breaks, right? Because like I notice if I do get on my phone, I'm texting, doing things, and the kids get in the car, I'm like, hold up, I'm not ready to talk to them.
You know? Let me finish this real quick.
Yes, exactly. Whereas if I'm like truly just in the moment, then they come in, and it's not, I mean, I don't feel like I need to be some kind of perfect mom who's immediately like, so your day, you know, it's not so much that, it's just like, I want to have some patience, and it doesn't always come naturally, you know? And so if I'm better rested myself, I have more to give.
Yes. And I think that's it, is to just be aware of where you are and have those check-ins, so that instead of when you get that extra 5 minutes, what should I do? It's more like, I like what you said, like what can I do to return to me right now? Or what do I need? What do I need most in this moment? Yeah.
Well, I love this quote in your book. Being a parent is a wild ride, and it takes great courage and spirit of adventure. In the most challenging of times, it helps to remember that there is only one course, living through what happens. I love that. How has this attitude helped you, and how did you kind of come upon that?
I think I'm trying to think back to writing that. I remember, you know, like when I wrote most of this, my kids were really little, and they're all about 2.5 years apart. So it was pretty insane when in the early times. I feel like I'm in the sweet spot right now. This is my 1 year of their whole childhood where they're all in elementary school together. It will never happen again.
Oh, that sounds so nice.
Yeah. So yeah, the sort of chaos, and I mean, it's still chaotic. There's dynamics all the time and things are going on. And so when I want to control the environment, it does not work ever. Like it just does not work. I can't make my outside environment all like line up and be peaceful. And So if I can just accept like, okay, I can't control any of you and what's going on out here. I have to show up. And like I said, like the spirit of adventure, it's like, if I can stay with each moment, like I'm like taking each step as it comes rather than trying to get like the whole picture and be on top of it, managing it, which doesn't work. If I see it as like I'm, going through the forest and I don't know what's happening next. And oh, look, here's that. And I can be in like real responsiveness instead of trying to control and then being reactive to what happens because it's not going the way I want it. I mean, this is not like, I'm not a master of this. This is like my learning, like this is what is a daily practice. And, I think what I'm feeling is that, the ideal isn't necessarily I'm going to somehow arrive at a moment where I'm never flustered again, but that I can more easily get up every time I fail, like I'll fall down and I can recognize like, oh, I did, fell into that trap again. And now I'm going to get back up, and I know I'm going to fail again and I'll get back up again, and it's just like getting back each time. If I find myself, being reactive to my middle son because he's getting anxious and asking me the same question over and over, and the tension's building up, and it's like, I don't always handle that the way I would most want to handle it. I'm not always feeling calm and peaceful and able to respond in a way that discharges that stress, and it's like, okay, well, that didn't go the way I wanted it. Let me try again, or let me go and talk to him about that and start over.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great way. I don't even want it to be just like easy, just like when you're like, I know it's like I'm gonna have hard days, that I'm just totally okay with it being as crazy as it is. But I feel so blessed, like when we meet moms like you and that are willing to share their story, that, whoo, man, like my kid was relentless today with this question over and over. And I was so crabby in my response, or I was so overwhelmed, that it really just gives other moms permission to take a breath and say, okay, all right, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like you become this mindful human and you're mindful in every moment.
There's no irritability.
No, right.
So it doesn't always go the way you want it to go. And some days you are going to, freak out on a kid. And you mentioned that you would go in the room maybe and have a conversation. Do you have other thoughts on that as far as when those moments happen? What could you tell other moms because sometimes I think we feel bad, that I messed up in some way. And what kind of, tips or even peace could you share with others who might feel that way when they get triggered? Yeah,
I mean, I know people have different feelings about timeouts, but I like to give myself timeouts. And not as a punishment, but really I need some timeout sometimes. So for instance, I have one child who's very, very picky about food. And if I'm, I do all kinds of things to adjust, to try to make dinner time be peaceful. Dinner time's hardly ever the way that I would imagine it could be, but never is. And so if I'm already had a difficult day, or for whatever reason, I'm a little bit on edge, and then somebody's complaining about their food, it can be a big trigger for me, I just put in all this time to this meal. And, so if I can start catching ooh, I can feel that tension in my body and the heat rising, I will say I'm going to go to my room for a little bit. I need to calm down before I can sit here and eat with y'all. And then I'll just go and have some time to myself until I feel like I can breathe and can go respond again. Mm-hmm. So I feel the more I can recognize when I'm getting triggered and remove myself from the situation, even if it's not the best thing for the child at the moment, I've had, that really helped me with my third child, realizing that when my daughter would have a tantrum or something and I would get to a place where I could not respond well anymore, I would take a break from her, even though she was still needing whatever she was needing. You know what I mean? She needed something from me, but I was not capable of giving it. and I was going to snap if I stayed there. And so it was better for me to get some distance. And then I would eventually feel like I could handle it, and I'd go back in and I could be calmer and respond, and it would be so much better. But it was only so much better because I was in a place where I had some perspective again, and I was just able to respond from a parenting place, not from my own child's, triggering place.
Right.
And so, I'm a big believer, like, in taking those kinds of breaks, those little breaks, but also the bigger ones, taking a day off, taking a weekend off if you can.
It's why for me, if I have a day or a weekend that I'm not going to be with my family and I'm not going to be working, it's really what gives me the energy to be with my family and to work hard.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I know when you get to the place you actually miss them, that's like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling. And yeah, but I think that pressure, I am very familiar with that guilt that comes after you mess up, or, you behave in a way that you are not proud of. And that guilt does not make you a better parent. It's just insidious. It's really, that self-critic can be so harsh. And so I think, and parenting is just such a great setup for that. Like, if you have a good inner critic in there, like, go be a parent. They'll have plenty of things to criticize, like, there's just there's so many things that come up and you don't know what to do. And it doesn't always go well. And
Yes.
so,
I think we need a special support group just for moms with picky eaters at
Oh
dinner
my
time.
God.
Seriously, I feel you. That is like my biggest trigger too. Snack after school with this one child, and then dinner. When I hear those words, what are we having for dinner? And we have a board now where he can see and he gets to pick and help. We've done all that, but it's still, I feel it in the pit of my stomach. I'm like, oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry. All those times I complain about the tuna meal you used to make us.
I know. And so, like, how to have some compassion for yourself as well. It's like feeding people is
hard.
Huge part of what, it's like one way that we show love. It's a way we take care of people. Like, it feels very personal. So it's, there's something to it, why that's so hard.
Yes.
For us. And so is there a way, like, I often think, like, can I include myself in my compassion? Like, I always forgive my children, I always have love for them, even, I'll be really mad at them and frustrated, but I will, want to bring them back in my heart,
Yeah,
but
that's really nice.
I need to come back in there too, like, I need to also feel forgiveness for myself.
Well, tell us what you love about the current stage that you're in, and also what's your biggest challenge as a mom currently?
I do love the current stage I'm in. Like I said, I really feel like this is the sweet spot. I remember, like, holding out hope for this period of time. As I don't have any toddlers, I don't have any teenagers, and it's the only time that I have just one transport situation, like they're all at one school just for this 1 year. It's also the first year that, I was working part-time and part-time home with my children when they were younger. So this was the first year that my youngest went to kindergarten. So for the first time in over 10 years, I have a little chunk of time that I'm not working or with the children, which is unbelievable to me. I really have never had, I always had, daycare only during the exact hours I was working. So, that feels luxurious. Even now, still, I can, even though it's been, however, since the school year started, I'll just notice, like, I'm taking a shower and there's no one else in the house, and it's just quiet, like the quiet. I really appreciate that about it. And I do really enjoy these ages of the children as well, like just the curiosity, but they can still, they can go to the bathroom on their own. They can get a snack by themselves. There's this independence, but they also, still like to be with the family and are, go on trips together, and they can play with each other so much more now. So I really do love that about this stage. The biggest challenge for me seems to be with the conflict that goes on between them. Mm-hmm. And just feeling like there's always, I don't know if it has something to do with having 3 of them, but it's like somebody always has to be off. It's like we can't all 5 be peaceful at once, It's very, very rare. And so I almost have felt one of them likes to take that role the most, but I sometimes feel like they have some hidden agreement where if these 2 are calm, then somebody else has to be unhappy in some way. There are times when all 3 of them get along and it's great, but there's also a lot of time where there's, whining, fighting, that sort of thing. And I get triggered in that. And so it's challenging for me to be able to respond in a way that, I don't want to be, I want them to learn some skills for working these things out. And I tend to be sort of hands off, let them figure it out. But then if it builds to a certain crescendo, then I have to come in and, sort it out. And so I want to help them have these conflict resolution skills, without micromanaging their interactions, and also without living in a house that feels like it's so crowded and noisy all the time. And that's the biggest challenge for me, is because I'm just temperamentally like really recharged in quiet and nature and having alone time. And yet I'm a mom of 3 kids, and so it's my home is not a refuge in that way that I do need one. And so the best thing that we did was we have a shed in the backyard, and this year we decided to get rid of lots of stuff, and we've kind of created it into a sort of like a tiny house without plumbing, but a little space that has nothing in it except like a little futon bed and meditation cushion, and just to have, because our house is small and there's no quiet space to retreat to. There's no second floor that you can't hear things. And so I've been working on like how to fill that need for myself, because it really does make me a much better parent when I'm centered like that. And when I'm not, I can be very irritable and I feel like I'm always trying to get away from them. And that's not good for anybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, we hear you on that. And it sounds very similar to a lot of women we've talked to who, just this need to reset, a lot of times is from just being alone. A lot of women, too, that we talk with have some sort of morning ritual, or definitely a self-care practice that they try not to miss. And I'm curious what yours is.
Yeah, I say there's 3 things I do every morning that are important to me. One is some sort of meditation. I sit either by myself. I also lead a couple meditation groups at my job, and then attend a group of parents. Actually, I've been in this meditation group for, I guess, 7 years now. Somehow every Sunday morning we've been meeting at someone's house and sitting together. And we all started with young children. And so we sit for 30 minutes and then we talk for 30 minutes. And that's been really supportive. But when I'm not doing, when it's not those days, when I'm in a group, I sit by myself, just for a few minutes, because I often don't have a big chunk of time, but really just like having a few minutes to breathe and get centered. And then stretching, like as I've entered my 40s, I've realized that my body needs a lot more attention. Yeah. And so doing some kind of my own sort of yoga stretching every morning for at least 10 minutes. And then I walk every day. I walk, usually for an hour, sometimes longer, but both the exercise of it, but also being outside is, super helpful for me. And I really notice it on the rare occasion when I can't do it. And so even when we go, like we'll go on these really long road trips and I'll get up at, 5:30 and walk in some random, highway by the hotel or something, just to make sure I'm, outside and I'm moving and I have some time to myself before getting back in the car.
That's great. I'm a walker too.
Oh yeah.
Well, I live in a place that has nature around too, that I just feel like I can get all of it in one swoop. I get my exercise, I get my mental clarity, and I get my connection to nature. So it's kind of efficiency for me, but
It's so amazing. I know. She picked the right spot to live.
It definitely works. So, well, as we wrap up our conversation today, what would you describe being a mindful mama means to you?
I associate the word mindfulness with, I guess because I learned it mostly through Vipassana meditation, with developing this sort of compassionate witness, like being able to notice what's going on without trying to change it or resist it or be kind of greedy around it. And so mindfulness as a mother, to me, means being in the present moment, like really being aware in the present moment, both of what's going on outside of me and what's going on internally. So noticing my emotional state, what's going on in my physical body, what's going on, in the dynamics around me and in the environment. And that's a tall order. So I feel like being a mindful mama is really about having that practicing that, and then you'll be not mindful sometimes, but coming back to it. Like it's all about the return, like returning to presence as many times as you remember.
We both like that. Oh, that was good. At the end of each show, we invite our guests to share a mindful mama moment. And this is really just a takeaway or a bit of inspiration that you'd like to leave our mamas with, and something that wraps up our conversation and inspires them to take mindful action after the show. Anything that you'd like to share?
I always feel like, if I had one thing to say to moms, it has to do with that self-compassion piece. Because I think, I don't know, I've never met a mom who doesn't love her children and want to do well by them, And I think we can be really hard on ourselves. And so to me, it's like one of the most important practices is the way that I talk to myself. So if I can catch it when I'm berating myself for something I did or said or whatever happened, to talk, to respond to that from a voice with so much more compassion. I kind of like go into my counselor self and, treat myself as if I were my client, and say like, hey, you've had a hard day. Like, oh, and you know what? You did that well. Did you notice that interaction? Like pointing out what you're doing well, having some forgiveness, encouraging yourself, like really working with some self-talk that is loving towards the self, because, no one's in your mind keeping track of all this. Like you have to live with yourself through every moment of your day. And so the love really has to start there.
I love it. I love it so much. And I'm curious if you have plans to write any more books.
I started writing on something. I did hospice work for a while, and it was super, super challenging in many different ways. And I also, I've always been just so fascinated by basically birth and death, these sort of intensive experiences of what does it mean to be alive. And so I was a hospice chaplain, about those experiences of going on these visits right after somebody had died. And so I'd write after each shift, and I haven't gone back to it, but lately it's been calling to me again. And I have to have patience around it, because it is not, it took me years to get Lessons of Labor out to a publisher. So I have to remember that it's like the practice of writing, the process of writing is what is where it's better to focus on the process of writing than like finishing a book.
Yeah.
At least where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Well, tell our mamas where we can learn more about you and purchase your book.
Sure. I have a website, and it's just my name.com. So Julia Aziz, JuliaAziz.com. And then the book's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can order it through your local bookstore. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll put all of that information in our show notes so mamas can find you easily. And we'd like to invite you to become a member of our private Facebook group, where we have a thriving community of moms who are sharing and being vulnerable and talking about their celebrations, but also their challenges. And I know that they would love to even ask you any questions once your show is out there. And we just thank you. Thank you for taking the time with us today.
Thank you for having me. You guys are great.
Thanks again for listening. We hope you love that episode. To hear all of our other past shows, go to mindfulmamamovement.com or look us up on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play. We're out there, and please, if you like this episode, if you like any of our shows, share them with your mama friends, because you are the ones that are helping grow our movement, and we appreciate you helping us spread the word. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Well, gather up all your brothers and sisters, hug your mom till you die.